Let's get started, shall we? Good day, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is John Henkel. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for our SMB division here at NETGEAR. And we are here once again talking about ProAV. And we have some exciting things to share, no doubt, some new adventures we're embarking on, and we want to let you know about those coming up. We'll review the agenda in a moment. We have the usual housekeeping sort of things to take care of. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them into the questions box, not the chat, but the questions box on the GoToWebinar panel. We have our good friend Derek handling those for you today. And we'll try to get all those questions. I think we're going to have time to actually have a pretty good Q&A session towards the end. So we'll make sure to save your questions, and you can do the usual, try to stump Laurent on some configuration questions, things like that. So we'll have a live portion of this webinar, a live section as well, and we can try to set up some things for you that you might want to see done live. Anyway, so questions for the Q&A control panel, and then you can resize cameras and things, I think, in here to make sure you see us or the presentation. And then we will certainly be recording this, and you will be notified afterwards. If you stick around today for the full webinar, you will be entered into a raffle to win your very own NETGEAR M4250. That's the 10G2F PoE Plus, or otherwise known as the GSM 4212P model. Is that right? Yes, 4212P. So stick around to the end. We'll announce a name, and then all you have to do is send an email to that email address there, nachannelmarketing@netgear.com. So stick around. We'll replay that information or show you that email address again at the end, and we'll good luck to everybody for winning that lovely prize. Today, I'm joined as often on these webinars by my good friend and coworker, Laurent Massia, Director of Product Line Management for the Managed Switches, which is what we're talking about, the M4250s. He also is the Director of our Engineering Services team. And that's part of what Derek is on, who's answering questions, is part of, and we'll talk about some of that too. So Laurent is, as I refer to, the father of ProAV at NETGEAR, and we're gonna talk about some fun things today, Laurent. I will hand it over to you to say hello and good day, all that kind of stuff.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, John. First and foremost, thank you for hosting this webinar. Thanks for having me, and glad to be here. Of course, we want to tell you things we shouldn't tell you because we are going to disclose what's coming next at the NAB, the ISC, and Infocom final in June. But also, we want to tell you everything new that we have today in the bank. So glad to be here. Thank you very much. So, John, if you don't mind, should we start right there?
This is a great slide to start with, and we'll get into some more product details. But look at this list of names. This is over 100 partners in the ProAV industry, and they're the biggest names, as you well know, as well as a lot of smaller companies who are the people doing the hard work and getting AV over IP out there in the marketplace. So every one of these companies, really, we have certified, either they certified our switches and or vice versa. And many of these are also stocking our switches now. So we're very happy and excited to have this list to show to you guys. You'll recognize, most all of them, I assume. But this is a worldwide list too. These are people who are in Asia, who are in Europe, in Australia, in the US, all around the board. You're really seeing the adoption of NETGEAR as the go-to switch vendor for AV over IP.
Right. And John, let me just add that, it's not only a list of, like a co-marketing activity. Behind that, you have years of hard work during very strict, certification process. And most, if not all, these manufacturers have the NETGEAR switches in their lab. We do have all their equipment in our lab. And this is how we can co-certify a solution that works, because we know how to make it work. And if anything's wrong, we know how to troubleshoot and fix the issues rapidly. So that's why it's always a good tip in the AV world to stick with approved solutions, from these vendors.
We know what you've been through, what you're going through, for sure. So that helps. So here's the update. Here's the agenda today. So we'll talk about some updates. Laurent will walk you through some updates to our newest M4250 line of products, and he'll give you a demo of some of those new things and also tackle any questions at that time. He's got some a good setup to do live in his place in Paris, and we'll get to that And then we have the breaking news, the really exciting additions to our M4250 and actually the 4300 product line as well. So we'll talk about those. That's our coming soon stuff. And I'm sure we'll get some questions on all that. So first, new 4250 updates, Laurent.
All right, so let me take it from here, John, because of course we want to tell you everything's new about 4250, the AV line, because we have this AV user interface that we enhance weeks after weeks, month after month. But of course, don't forget that the AV line is the big umbrella, and the 4250 and the 43 and the 45 all together, these three series, they form the AV switching infrastructure that we have at NETGEAR, and those are the switches that we enhance, and those are the switches we support for you, with you, for all type of AV projects. All right. So this is the favorite introduction for the 4250 because we recorded it live actually during the pandemics. Remember, John? And we like it because the 4250s, they look different because they are different from a form factor standpoint. They really don't look like anything else NETGEAR because they are designed for the 1G AV over IP world, but also they are looking good in the AV rack because the ports and the power, it's all on the back. And on the front, we have a slick status information with LEDs, that's all. But of course, if you want to use it IT style, if you want to use it with the ports in the front, because you're against the wall, for instance, well, then you can reverse the switch and the ports can be back or rear. So John, I liked it because you cut this table. We are going to use these switches today during the demo. And as a preliminary point, I want to tell you the demo effect, it does exist. So please bear with me when we will fire up those units. But the 4250 line, it's a big line now, 11 models, goes to 11. And we have three 10 port or 8 ports PoE or 10 port total, 12 port with the uplinks. So those switches, they are either a PoE plus or PoE plus plus, 10G uplinks or not. You have a lot of choice for the meeting rooms, the conference rooms. Then we have the multi-gig and 10 gig aggregators, if you want to call them this way. So those switches are good because they can offer the core or the spine role to the switches to the edge. Still, they look good because they are AV compatible for your AV racks. Then come the 24 ports. Actually, there are 26 ports with or without 10 gig uplinks, with or without PoE plus plus 90 watts. And then we have the 48 ports with 8 uplinks because in this AV world, you need a lot of bandwidth in and out those switches. So that's the 4250 portfolio. And now, John.
Hold on here for 1 second. So people realize this, we did this in 2 ways. If you've heard about these for a while, we've talked about these for coming up on 2 years now, right? I think it was February 2020. Right. The first 5 came out and we added, or first 6, and we added 5 came out, we added 6 more. So this is the entire product line for the 4250s. I know people at first were looking for the larger port counts, and we have those now. So we have a full line of these. And note the PoE power. I mean, we're seeing more and more devices with PoE plus plus requiring that. I saw some plans for some of our partners for upcoming trade shows, and they're like, I need 3 of these switches because I need a whole lot of PoE plus power or a higher PoE budget. And we go up to 2880. I mean, that's a lot of PoE budget for these. So don't discount these as they're the newest, smaller AV switches. These are still really powerful switches.
Yeah, thank you. And that's really the chicken and the egg story, because before it was impossible for let's take the audio manufacturers, right? Speakers, sound bars, even big boomers. It was hard to find PoE 90 watts out there, right? So now that the AV line NETGEAR is here, now that it can do AVB and Dante and AS67, even AS70 now, or Dante, well, now they can actually, build those giant speakers. So that's good. All right, so now, John, I want to, before I show you what's new, I want to just repeat because we don't say it enough. I just want to repeat what makes NETGEAR AV line so different. Why anyone in this AV industry should go NETGEAR instead of going with XYZ or the switch platforms. And when it comes to NETGEAR, why we would go with the M series and not, lower end platforms. So the answer is really simple. Three things. The first thing is IGMP Plus. We take it for granted now, right? Because it's out there for a long time, but it's fundamental. It's fundamental because IGMP is deficient, and you just flood the entire network with multicast, with standard switches. With the M series at NETGEAR, you don't, because the IGMP Plus stays local on every switch, and if and only if you have one stream that got to traverse the network because somebody subscribes to it, then boom, you will flood that stream, but that stream only. So you keep your multicast very well managed, very well organized, and you have no flooding across the network. It sounds like it's easy. It's not, can tell you. And the second thing is that due to that, we can actually scale up to hundreds and thousands of endpoints in the same layer 2 network without complexity, without routing, without OSPF, PIM, sports modes, dance mode, and all that. So this is instrumental, and that's the first reason. But we didn't get there, right? Because John, I remember you said that's not enough.
No, we
So
need more.
So after the IGMP, we realized that still VLANs, it's a problem because VLANs, it's quite easy to do at the port level. You put the port into the VLAN 10, the other ports into the VLAN 30, but what about the uplinks? Well, you need to do the trunking. You need to add all those VLANs in between switches. So now this is automatic. It's the same as IGMP Plus. This is enabled by default on the 4250 line. Just one click now in the 4300s to enable that. As soon as we connect a couple of switches together, if you have VLANs left and right, the link in between will be dynamically configured to carry all your VLANs without any configuration to do. So this is automated so that you don't have to worry anymore about your interconnect. And of course, the brother sister feature, the lag, the link aggregation. Sometimes you need plenty of ports in between switches because you need 20, 40, 60, 80 gigabits of bandwidth in between switches. And well, there's one way or two to do it, stacking, lagging, but it's all cumbersome. So we removed that as well. We said, well, the switches should do that themselves. And now they do, because as soon as you will have several links in between switches, the link aggregation is made for you dynamically so that you don't worry anymore. So if you recap, or maybe if you do the math, IGMP is managed automatically with IGMP Plus for all VLANs. Trunking is managed for you because you don't have to worry anymore about the trunking between switches, and the aggregation between switches, the lags are also dynamic. So all in all, you just need to worry about what's important for you, what is connecting to where, and just put the devices into the right ports with the right color. And we are going to demo that. But John, what is your feedback about that?
I think it's great. As a novice to networking, these sort of features really help. I will say I haven't configured large networks at all, so I haven't been able to avail myself of these features, but I do understand from what I've heard that these are kind of difficult to configure for somebody. And you can do it, of course, and people are trained for this, absolutely, but why not be able to use a shortcut to make it easier for that? And then we'll configure the switch for you. There's a good question that came up on the same topic about the desire to have, or the possibility of enabling stacking on the 4250s. Is that something that we're looking into?
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth. Stacking is something that comes from the past. I don't think it's going to cut it in the future, because stacking comes with a lot of restrictions, limitations, the number of switches in the stack, the way the multicast is going to be handled in the stack, because in the stack you have that feature, you can remove any switch, it works. So all the multicast is like flooded, replicated 100%, 200%, 300% if you have 3 switches. So the stacking really doesn't scale. So we believe that with a managed, let's call it autopilot, with lags in between switches, and a good AV user interface, and stick to the end, because I'm going to show you what is going to be up at Infocom in June. We believe that stacking, it's probably good for IT, but for AV, it's too restrictive. And we believe that it's going to be more scalable, and the performance is going to be much better with lagging.
Got it. And then auto lag, of course, will help that immensely. So that's a good thing.
Right.
Since we're stopped here for a moment, if you don't mind, one more question, and it's a question we do get, and we'll certainly be getting coming up at NAB. What about supporting SMPTE 2110?
Oh, so that's a fundamentally different topic. SMPTE 2110 requires, the grandmaster and the boundary mode on the switchers. And the NETGEAR M series only provides the transparent clock for the PTP packets so that they can stamped with the residency time, that's all. So we very honestly, for this year, we are not going to have any plan for SMPTE 2110 because the boundary mode, the grandmaster clock, it requires a lot of PTP profiles, both for AES67 and ST2110. And we are still assessing, all that what it takes. Don't forget that on top of it, you very often need 2500 gigs. So it's both a hardware issue due to the clock, as I mentioned, and the software issue. So this is certainly something that is up in the air, but NETGEAR this year wants to first serve the ProAV market and do it right. And we are going to assess that for the future. And don't forget, NETGEAR is a public company, so we should not comment on future product introductions.
You can understand us after doing a couple of these webinars. We'll drop a hint here and there at certain things, but certain things, yeah, we just can't talk about. But we do have some coming soon things we will show you for sure coming up. So stay tuned for those. One more question since we're here, and this is to do with what you were just talking about, if you don't mind. The dynamic trunking, is it an automatic VLAN that is being created as well?
What is in between yes and no? 0.5 in English.
Yes.
Pardon my French. Half. So the dynamic auto trunk is taking what is in the VLAN database on the left. It's taking what's in the VLAN database on the right, and it is adding all that in trunk mode. Okay, so you still got to create your VLANs, right? So of course, behind this question, you have VTP from Cisco. It's like 20-year-old. It's actually a whole mystery because it's a big security threat, right? But when you think about it, really, anyway, but VTP is like propagating VLANs automatically. So auto trunking is not that. But as John said, stick to the end, maybe 30 minutes from now, because I believe we found a way to centrally propagate all the VLANs so that you do it once across the network. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Enough questions. Let's move on. Let's get to some of the demo. That's fun.
All right. So before we fire up those switches, I just want to give you the 3 or maybe 4, I don't remember, latest updates we have done based on popular demand. So see, when we log on the main page of the AV user interface now, we have this management IP address. By the way, you have the out-of-band OOB IP address on the left as well. But we can actually select this and manipulate it so that you can centrally, directly, without going to the other more cumbersome IT interface, tell if your VLAN 1 is the management VLAN, or maybe you have another VLAN, another profile, you want to make it as management VLAN for the switch. and you can then alter, modify, or just set up your IP settings that you want, static IP, DHCP client, okay? So this is new, this is all available, and this is, to me, one less reason to go to the other IT interface. We really want to offer you what's the strict minimum, but what is useful for your jobs in the AV world. So you can now edit that directly. The second thing, and that's great, because did you hear about that story about the quirky courier? My bad accent, you never know where is the courier, and it's really important to know it got to be one, right? So with IGMP plus, the switches, they talk each other, they participate to the election, the least, if you wish, the smallest, the lowest IP address wins the election. But it's good to see the operational state on the switch for a VLAN about the courier. So now you have those little dots on the right-hand side of the configured profiles. You can edit an existing profile, for instance, but you have now this entry for courier. You have the election participation that you can disable if really you don't want to play with the election. You want to fix statically one courier somewhere, and then you tell the other switches to use it, right? Kind of. But frankly, I don't advise that much, because what about redundancy then, right? If the switch is gone, then you don't have any courier, and without a courier, Derek Falberg on the chat will tell you it's not going to work. It got to be one, only one, but it got to be one. So now you can actually see the operational state. That's the point. Operational state is the switch for that VLAN acting as the courier. The 000, don't worry about it. This is a dummy. We use it so that, the switch gets back to the default IP address of that VLAN. And if there's no IP address of that VLAN, the switch gets back to the management IP address. But the courier is now right there. No need to fire up the other AV interface.
So you can answer a question for me being the novice guy as I read this, as I watch this.
Yep.
Previous slide. So this is a courier per VLAN. So this is something I'm not familiar with. Each VLAN would have its own courier.
Oh yeah. So how IGMP works, John? I mean, I know you want to be an SC later in NETGEAR, so you got to know that. The IGMP protocol is really simple, right? You have a new device, a new camera, or a new encoder. You plug that thing into the network, and if that's a encoder, it's going to bombard the network with a multicast stream, so it's going to point to a multicast address. So what the switch is doing immediately is blocking it, right? Because if not, it would turn into broadcast. And then this device, when it's joining, it's sending what is called a unsolicited report, right? So the switch picks it up because we know it's a multicast. Then the courier, and there's only one, again, per VLAN, you're right. The courier is, if you wish, working as a database, right, as a controller for the entire broadcast domain. It's going to say, well, there is an unsolicited report out there. There is a new multicast stream. It's going to send a query. It's going to send a query to the encoder. Hey, what are you up to, right? And then the encoder is going to respond saying yes, and same thing for the clients. They are going to respond to the queries and saying yes, and then the querier is registering the group, and the IGMP snooping, which is the second function in the switch, will snoop on those queries and answers, and this way the multicast works. So yes, one querier per VLAN, right?
It's the per VLAN part, I think, was the new part. That was good explanation. Thank you.
All right, John. Tell me, in your previous lives, you probably used some of those lighting equipment, ArtNet, SSEN, ManNet. It's a different world. It's the live event world. You have those equipment. They are quite special, but my gosh, they are so hard for the network. So we figured, took us time, but we figured now with the latest firmware, you have in your AV user interface a profile that is configured for this. And the secret behind the scene is all about broadcast. These things, they consume almost all the bandwidth with broadcast, so we got to manage it efficiently. But if there is one good reason to create a profile and a dedicated VLAN, that's for this, right? Never put your universes, as they say, into the default control or management VLAN. That would kill it. All right. Well, it's time for the demo, I guess. The last update, actually, this came in November last year. Now directly into the AV user interface without going to the cumbersome IT GUI. You can actually go to the multicast and either block or force multicast. You have a collection of corner cases why you want to do that. I'm going to give you two only. A Macintosh, right? Mac OS, you have a PC with a Audinate Dante virtual card. This thing is not IGMP compliant. So you will not see much Dante unless you force the Dante, which I believe is 224, because you can do it either globally or by multicast subnets. So Dante should be like 224. And you can force the multicast to your Audinate Mac OS virtual sound card, and it will work. Reversely, you have collection of cases when you don't want multicast on a device because this device is not really using it, and it's actually burdening it, right? So the touch panel becomes unresponsive and all kind of bad things. So in that case, we can just click on one port and block any multicast or a range of multicast for that port. So SE's node behind the scene, it's based on very complex multicast ACLs, access control list. Here it's one click for you guys so that you can focus what's important for you. That's your AV job, not the complex switch configuration.
And again, another reason to use the AV GUI and not have to go back and forth. That's great.
Right. All right.
Here's the team. Yeah.
That's the thing, John. So I like this collection of pictures. I'm not sure how you managed to travel to Southeast Asia, China, Japan, India, Netherlands, France, Germany, UK, California. I mean, you went everywhere. How did you do that?
It's all over. We have this thing called the internet now, and I can actually scrape a photo from your LinkedIn profile and update it accordingly. Yeah, I mean, this is the breadth, and I just added a couple new ones too. So this is pretty up to date list of all these people, and this is your team around the world. So with one simple email address, and as you're trying to configure your network, or even kind of figure out what switch is right, do I have this the right way or not? We'll help you figure that out. There's some example diagrams from simple to complex. This doesn't have to be a 4-story building. Kind of American dream mall layout. This can be a much simpler installation just to verify that you have everything correct. And then the next time you'll understand more, and you may not have to even reach out to these guys. But we're here for you. That's the bottom line. It's a team effort, and we're here to help.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Very well said, because we don't want, of course, we like the nice, big, great, large installs like, you know, the parliament or the Congress or the presidential debate or whatever. But actually, that's not, you know, we like it, but we are here to support you, you know, from the design to the configuration to the troubleshooting. And, you know, you have like 3, 4, 5%, depends on the weeks, of installs, you know, that just go wrong because you have interop issues, and this team is here to support you. But as John said, especially at the beginning, get to us, please, at the beginning, not at the end, you know, because you need to select the right platform, you need to select the right uplinks, you need to have a good design in first place. But as John said, what we hope is, you know, the knowledge transfer in such a way that after 1, 2, 3 jobs all together, you will do your own, you know, like cookie cutter. But we are here to support you. And that's, you know, to us, even more important than the hardware and the software. All right, so John, it's time to wish me, you know, good luck about that, because that's what we want to do today. I mean, you remember those 100 partners in that single slide, all these logos. I mean, we do video, we do audio, we do EVB, we do a lot of things. Lighting, man, now. But This is a very common use case. We have seen a lot since the pandemics because you have more and more portable NDI mobile studios. Means that your goal is to, instead of working in your studio, you go into the wild, into the field, and you want to plug your studio anywhere. And what does it mean? It means that you are going to be provided with one link to a network, which is a known network, but at least you will get an IP address out of it, right? And you will get internet access. And the goal here is to, have a studio, mobile studio, with the internet section of the studio, so that you have all your workstations, your Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, you have your TriCaster or vMix or OBS Studio, your production server, so that you can actually go out and receive incoming calls on the internet. And simultaneously, you want to have a second segment, I should say. You want to have your equipment, so all your cameras, all your mics, everything. And this should be separate, right? You don't want to put that onto the venues network or onto, I don't know, the church network or the university network if you happen to have an event in a campus. Instead, you want to protect that. You want to isolate your equipment into a, let's say, NDI for this one, and Dante with the Shure wireless microphones and all that. You want to have that into your own VLAN. And while we are at it, you want to have them always in the same subnet with your own IP addresses, right? That you are used to with the DHCP server. So I would like to drive you through that, if you agree. I have a variant of that later, but for the first demo, we want to connect two switches. Of course, we could use only one, right? But I can't resist, John. I want to show you the dynamic lag and trunking right in between the switches. So we're going to use the green VLAN 1 for internet, and we are going to use the orange VLAN for NDI and Dante. And see my workstation? I have two NICs, two network cards. So I have one leg going to my multicast NDI VLAN, and I have another leg, another NIC, another network card going to the internet segment, right? So that my OBS or my vMix, if you wish, gets all the multicast and gets everything else and can stream on the internet, using the other leg, right? So that should be a very standard, but of course, we want to sit. Are you ready, John? Yeah.
I'm ready. This is all coming from Laurent's home office, by the way, in Paris. So he's got this all configured. Maybe not all those cameras. You don't have 5 of the cameras there, but
yeah. Well, I don't have, because I took the greatest, the latest and greatest from Bird Dog, Berlin Marshall, Panasonic, PTZ Optics. I mean, and I forgot. I mean, we have many other great partners, but I don't have them all, right? But I'm going to use one of them, and you can see actually on that side the 2 switches and all those encoders, decoders, cameras, and all that, right? So let's go for it, and please use the chat or the question box, right, so that we can take your question and answer them later, right? So we have a multi-gig 12-port MSM 4214X down there. We're going to start with this one, and we have a big 48-port ultra PoE, because some of those cameras with PTZ functions and all that, they need more than 30 watts, right? So we are going to use the first switch as the core, if you wish. We are going to cut that switch into the green and the orange, and we are going to say, this is my core, this is where I want my DHCP server for my orange NDI VLAN, all right? So I just plugged into one, on the wall here, happens to have a NETGEAR router in that location. I just can take a look. My 12M2XF picked up the 192, 168, 115. The other switch picked up the 119, okay, 15 and 19. And well, if you don't have access to that router venue, no worries. You can still use the out of band because it's always the same, 192, 168, 0239, and figure what's in the VLAN 1, or you can use the CLI, the Telnet, the USB cable. You have plenty of means. So let's connect to the first switch, which is the 115. And this is your mobile studio, right? So the first thing we want to do, because this switch is default, I promise, factory default. And bear with me, because the demo effect, it does exist. We know that. We're gonna, so we see the management IP address that this switch picked up. I showed that to you. We can now see it's DHCP client, but it picked up the 115. I'm gonna go to the network profiles. By the way, I see that I already have my two cables, right? So I can, you can see that on that side, I already have my 10G DAC cables in between. So I see my other switch. By the way, it took the 119, I can see it here. So I really don't want to touch that. It's all automatic. The lag is automatic. Go to the network profiles. We said that we want the internet VLAN being green. So that's going to be my default VLAN 1 because it's all preset, right, with the routing. So we should leverage this one. We're going to edit it. And we are going to say, well, look, I want to use some orange color, right? And here we don't touch. It's actually DHCP client. It's all good. We stay like that. We are on the venues network here. Don't forget, only internet customer facing, if you wish, devices, right? We are going to apply that so that all ports are orange. So while we are talking, what the AV user interface is doing, it's sending all those commands to the switch so that you don't have to do it yourself, okay? So this process takes a few seconds, but now all my ports belong to the VLAN 1, all right? Now we are going to create a new profile, and you've seen that I have plenty of cameras with Dante, but I also have Shure Dante mics. I could have also QSys or AES-67 other audio equipment. So I'm going to pick up this great certified profile. We are going to call it, well, that's my studio, studio with Dante and a NDI. We are going to say, for instance, that you want that your personal studio always runs on the VLAN 42. We said that we want it to be green, right? And I'm not going to select any ports here, although I could, right? But in my diagram here, I reserve the green for the first switch. So I don't have to select ports on that switch down there for the orange. I'm just provisioning it. Because now what I want to do is to enable layer 3 so that we decide that our VLAN for NDI will always be 192.168.42. Let's take the last one for the class C, 254. That will always stay like that. And we want to use that VLAN as a server on that switch, a DHCP server. We are going to reduce the DHCP pool starting at 100. Please don't put 100 here, because if not, you have only one available IP for your server. Put 200. And so that you have some space, right, for static. And then you are not going to specify any DNS server. Why is that, John? Would you know why you don't want to have DNS for the DHCP IP addresses provided to those cameras in your specific internal NDI VLAN?
Well, I think number one, you don't need it, but beyond that, I wouldn't know exactly why.
Yeah, you don't want internet, right? It's your studio. This is local, so don't put DNS in there. The devices will get an IP address from the server. The router for them will be the 254. They will get a 100, 101, 102, and all that. But without DNS, you will not allow for any internet. Okay? Click apply. Of course, we recommend that you at least one DNS server if you want to do internet, but that's not what we want to do. We do that on purpose, right? So what we are doing here while we are waiting, we just provision the VLAN 42 on 192.168.42.254 on that multi-gig switch down there. Done. So we don't see any green color because I did not assign any port, but I can tell you with auto trunk that is enabled, this VLAN is going through to the other switch. So what is the other switch? Let me see into the neighbor. So personally, I'm here. I'm connected to the port 3 for that webinar. Actually, today I'm on the internet VLAN. Remember, but I am actually I see my 192.168.119 40G8XF. That's the other one. Let's connect to this guy. On this one, we only have to do one thing, right? We want to provision, because right now only the VLAN 1 is in there. I have all my connections already, my few AV and camera equipment. I have my VLAN 1 that is already there by default. So what we want to do is just to create this similar profile. That's my studio. What did we say? With NDI and Dante. Between you and me, John, you don't need to be perfectly exact between the two. What must be exact is the VLAN number. Got to be the same. And the color, same thing. I did not save which color I use, so I'm going to be approximative. But that's what we do. And here, keep it simple, guys, because you already have set up the layer 3 on the other switch. Here, you just say layer 2. You don't need to set up any IP because everything is going to come, the routing, the DHCP from the other switch. So you stay layer 2. And of course, you need to assign ports. So I'm going to take all ports, and I'm just going to remove maybe the fiber ports, right? Because after all, on the right-hand side of the switch, you may want to reserve some fiber ports. Anyway, usually that's uplink switch to switch. It's going to be taken care of with lags and auto trunk anyway. All right, I am applying, and we're done. Now we're going to see if it works. Okay.
One way to find out.
Right. So I am going to wait until it's all done. So I have my switch. It's all orange. On my first switch, if I go to the network profile, it should be, what did we say? Did I miss? Yeah, I did a miss. I did. I mean, I reverted the colors here, right? So this one should be green, but pardon me, that's okay, right? You understand the point. VLAN 1 is the data, the studio Dante is VLAN 42, but I'll fix that later, right? But my 42 is going all the way. So now let's go to that switch and see what's up there, right? So on the port 1, you should see on this side a camera. So the camera is on the port 1 of that 48 port switch. It's not LLDP capable, so it doesn't tell much about the IP and MAC address, but we are going to use NDI Studio, right? Because I am on that network. By the way, my PC is connected somewhere down there. So I have my link coming from my PC down there. So if I go to my studio monitor, I should find the HD NDI 200. I find this camera, the 42-100. Well, it's working because this camera picked up it was the first one picking up the DHCP address. Let me tell you that sometimes some of these cameras, because before they got an IP address on the VLAN 1, maybe they are going to stick, right, John? They're going to stick. They're not going to dynamically change. So what we should do, well, either you want to physically connect or disconnect, but while we are at it, I can show you into the port configuration. You have your ports. Go to the interface settings, select the port 1. Disable it, and then the camera, you can say bye-bye because it's gone, right? The port is all shut. So if I go to my, of course, it's like static now, right? It's the last frame that we still see. So now we are going to fire it up again, go back to the port interface settings into port configuration, select the port 1, enable that port. And then we're going to see how much time it's going to take. But you know, the camera is going to boot because it's a PoE camera.
Right.
And at some point, the stream is going to be back. Right? I told you demo effect. What's the boot time? Maybe 20 seconds. I can show you something else. Let's put that up there for now. All right. Now we should see. No, it's not back up there. Let me see. Not yet. All right. I'm going to show you my PC now because I have my. Oh yeah, you're right, John. Great eye. So the camera is back on, right? So if I go to my NIC, same thing. It is DHCP server address. So I am on that network. So what does it mean, John? Last piece of the demo now, recap from the diagram, because I am connected to that same VLAN, I should be able to manage that camera, right? Because I am also on the 192.168.42 subnet. So I am going to test that right now. Give me a second. I lost my browser. What's the camera? Oh, I told you that's the demo effect. Okay. All right. It's up there.
Just an overachiever. You're trying to do too much at once.
Right. 192.168.42.100. Right. So let's check it. 192.168.42.100. All right. So I can log to the camera. Right? So your mobile studio is working and you are good to go. The last thing that I wanted to tell you is that sometimes, it's not my case here, but sometimes if you use a TriCaster or Vmix or OBS Studio with 2 NICs, this workstation is going to try to get to the internet on that side. You know what I mean? But on that side, you have no internet. So you want to force the internet to go only using that NIC, the green one. How do you do that? Well, I'm going to tell you, I mean, you have multiple tricks, right? But the easiest is to manipulate yourself your second NIC, go to the properties, go to the, if you are Windows, but it's the same for Linux or Mac, edit the TCP/IP and tell, because with the DHCP address that my workstation got, I still have a gateway, right? But I don't have DNS, but you never know again. If you have any problem, just statically use an IP address on that subnet, oops, but outside of the DHCP scope, right? Like a static 192.168.40, like 99, remember? We started at 100. The subnet, the class C, and don't put any gateway. If you keep the gateway blank, the workstation will never even try to use that other leg to go to the internet, and your streaming or your incoming Teams and Zoom calls and everything will stay on the other leg. All right?
That makes sense. Yep. If it doesn't know it has it, it won't even try.
Exactly. All right. So now I have a second quick demo, real quick. Oops,
Gotta be quick.
Yeah. Because what if not only you want to do everything we just did, but you also want to provide control so that from the green VLAN, you can access and manage any of your orange devices in another VLAN.
Yes, okay. That's a good question. And that question's been asked a lot. I've seen that in some of our community forums or somewhere else that people have questioned that.
So the answer is very simple. The switch is doing the routing. So in the switch, a workstation on that VLAN knows how to get to the device. But then, because the workstation use a gateway, which is the venue gateway, the packets, they don't know how to come back ever. So you will not be able to do that. So the only solution in that case, come equipped with your mobile studio with a router, any type of router at the end, so that you have NAT in between, right? You can manipulate that router. And this way, where is my browser? My router is over here. It's a NETGEAR router. If I go back to the router status, yeah, for sure, I logged off. So I just need to relog in. Give me just a second. What you will want to do is to go to the static routes, and you will want to put one static route that is back from the main gateway to the 192.168.42.0 using the downstream gateway, which is 192.168.115. Remember, that's the IP address that I got. And now I'm going to prove to you that it's working. So it was actually already there, but if I edit it, destination address, this is the subnet you want to reach in your static route on your router. It should be always the same. Okay, so when you do that once, you can then travel to any type of venue after that. It is reaching the 42.0 subnet using the downstream gateway 192.168.115 because it's your router, so you can set it as a static, for instance, right? You will always give the 192.168.115 to your router. And now, bear with me, because this is the most difficult thing. I'm going to cut my leg, John.
Okay.
I'm going to physically disconnect myself, and I think you're going to see me real quick. Where is my camera? Over there. I'm going to disconnect myself.
More proof this is actually live. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I look at my connection, I mean, the USB is like gone, right? So my 1G is connected to the small switch, the DHCP server right there, right? So I do not have any physical access to the 192.168.42 subnet. Agree?
Mm-hmm.
Because I am on the 192.168.1 subnet. But still, I'm going to fire up my browser. I'm going to close it so that nobody can say, whoa, what's the IP address again? I forgot. 192.168.42.100. Is that right? Yeah. Drum roll or not, John? Maybe.
Drum roll. Wait.
It's working.
There you are.
So I am actually logging to this particular camera that we are testing right now. And it's working. So again, so that we don't fake it, if I go to the status of that built-in 1G, you can see that I am on the 192.168.123 personally, but I can still access the 42 subnet because you have the routing in the switch and because you have your static routes that is done on your gateway and you have control. So that's how you do it. Well,
amazing. We've had people request to review those settings again. I think we're running low on time, I have to say.
right.
So we'll have to rely on the recording, Narbe, to look at the settings again and double check what Laurent did there. But we're coming fast up on the hour, and we have some really exciting things to still get to. So
right.
I want to make sure we have time for that, Laurent. These are real world situations. I know people have asked about those questions for sure. Real quick, coming up where you can see some of these new things we're going to show you. NAB is coming up, National Association of Broadcasters in Vegas. All these are live shows, so come see us for sure. ISE in Barcelona in Europe in May, and then in June, of course, Infocom, and we'll really be doing the big splash for all these new product announcements at Infocom. But please stop by. We'll have live demos at all three of these shows.
Thank you, John. So I think it's time, right? We have exactly 3 minutes to go, but yes. Remember, NETGEAR is a public company. We usually don't, show anything new in the future plans or future roadmap, but I'm going to tell you the truth, people. We should have done ISC in February, but it was canceled due to COVID. So now ISC is in May in Barcelona. And it was in our plans to start disclosing a little bit of the 2022 roadmap in February. That's what we want to do now. So this is with honor and great pleasure that John and I want to share with you what's coming at Infocom in June. It's not an hallucination. It's really much a 4250 new group of switches, but pocket switches, desktop switches, so that you will really be able to put that in your bag for your NDI studio. The mobile studio is a perfect example. But the flanges on the side for left, right will be in the box so that you will be able to stitch this behind the screen, on the wall, on the table, the shelf. So those two desktop switches are announced, pre-announced, and they will be live by June timeframe in Las Vegas. 1G version for audio and 10G uplinks version for audio, all the same goodness with the AV user interface and all the same settings and hardware features. Only difference is a very sleek compact form factors and external power adapter.
There's still a threaded mounting hole on the bottom of these, right?
Yep. So the rack mount units, they have VESA for VESA plates, right? We couldn't do it because here you have left space. So don't forget, it got to go through the PCB. It's not that good. So we couldn't put those screws. So what we have is the usual, holes for just, a quick setup, but better than that, it's coming with additional flanges on the right, brackets left and right, so that you can actually put those brackets on, and then you can stitch this wherever you want. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. Well done. And this is something people asked for, I think, early on too. So it's nice to see that coming up.
How can I put my 4250 switch in my luggage? Well, yeah, that's right. It's a rack mount unit. So the desktop switches will be good. So that's going to be only for a fraction of our attendance today, but we got a lot of questions. We worked hard. We delivered to the world 2 years ago the REST API for the 4300 switches, the higher end switches, So this REST API agent is coming to the 4250 switches by Infocom timeframe as well. So that the same commands, the same JSON, post, get, or Python, whatever HTTP commands will be used on the 4250 switches by that time. So if you want to get your hands on the 4300 API or the 4500 API, or if you will want to get your hands on the 4250 API, just drop an email at proavdesign@netgear.com. We'll get you on board.
Yep.
Well, some emotion now because that's coming and that's really big. So John, should I do it now? Yeah.
Do it. Bring it.
All right. So I'm very happy and very excited to show you what's coming at Infocom in June as well. What you might recognize on that page is somewhat some portion of the AV UI, but wait a minute, that's a 4396X down there. So also, this is not only one AV user interface, this will be a central controller application that you will run on any of your PCs or Mac or Linux, even off a thumb drive. So that will be your software controller. This controller will discover all the switches, my 48 port, my 12 port multi-gig, and anything else in the M series at NETGEAR dynamically and automatically. You will adopt them. You will upgrade the firmware just with one click so that you don't have to worry anymore. Where is that new firmware? Where should I input it and all that? And for the nice person who asked that question earlier about VTP and automatic VLAN propagation, see in a site, in a given site, John, you will centrally provision in that tool your orange VLAN and your green VLAN once for all, so that you don't have to do it anymore. You don't have to create all your VLANs on all your switches. That will be dynamic. And then the embedded user interface in that controller will fire up for you any of the switches so that you can just select the ports, what is doing where, you know. So this controller is coming. This is a big thing for us. I think there will be a before and an after, and we are so happy to just disclose that to you a little bit today. If you have some interest in there, just drop an email at proavdesign@netgear.com. We will be honored to include you, maybe all of you, into our beta plan that will start sometimes in May.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet, and that's why we're so hesitant. You know, we had the ISE trade show originally in February. We're going to talk about some of these things coming up. That was delayed, but we really just couldn't hold some of the stuff back yet. So we wanted to make sure everybody's aware we are doing a lot of work to enhance these products, and this is one of the big things. So we're going to wait until it's right, and we're not going to get it out there where it's just not quite working the way we think is right. So we want to make sure that happens, and that will be just a little bit later, unfortunately. But
Right.
you can still see a beta or alpha beta version of that at NAB in Las Vegas in a few weeks. Or no, a month. Sorry, a month.
Yep.
And then at ISE, of course, more, and then certainly at InfoComm. We're past the hour. I want to thank everybody for sticking around. I know that we always do this. We have too many things to talk about, Laurent. But
I know you're gonna hate me again, John. I'm so sorry about that.
Never. No, what's great, you know, these are good things to get into for sure. These are real world questions that you get from the ProAV design group. And you know how frustrating some of these things are for people. So you answer them here live, and people appreciate that in the Q&A for sure. So I know there's a couple of questions we didn't quite get to. We'll reach back out to you afterwards, I promise. But here are some resources, first of all, for you to find out more information in general. It should be kind of obvious to you. Our training academy has some great courses. Don't forget about that as well. And before a lot of you have to leave, perhaps I see you're still here. That's great. I did the spinning wheel for today's prize, and our winner today is Ralph P. Garcia Sr. Ralph, congratulations. You're the winner of this lovely switch, the GSM 4212P. And there's the email address. You want to send us your contact information for where to send this to you. So NA Channel Marketing at netgear.com. Thank you very much for that. And next webinar coming up in March 23rd, coming up next week for the new WAX 630E access point. That's a 6E access point targeting small and medium businesses. That's a pretty sweet product and harnesses all the latest power of Wi-Fi 6E. So check that out next week. Doug Chung will take you through that. Any other questions, you can reach out to Laurent and I. You can find us certainly on the internet and the ProAV Design. Laurent's on that. For any questions about other webinars, you have NA Channel Marketing, and we look forward to seeing you at NAB if you're going to be there. Otherwise, we'll see you at some other trade show or some other webinar soon. What did I miss, Laurent? I think that's it.
Well, you just missed this. John, you're the best host we never had at NETGEAR, so thank you.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure working with you. And thanks, everybody. I really appreciate your time. Take care.